thing about the restaurant industry is the overwhelming number of millennials coming in. WyckWyre especially has noticed this. We've noticed that roughly 32% of all of our applicants coming into WyckWyre in 2014 were of the millennial generation. So before we get started, what I really want to do is kind of define who millennials are. We'll talk a little bit about the workforce stats and just their general traits. Then what we'll do is we'll kind of go on and talk about how do we get them into our stores, how do we keep them there, why do we want them there, and then, how do we keep them moving through our general cycle? How do we get them from those entry-level employment jobs all the way up to, supervisors, assistant managers, general managers, and beyond? So just to define what we're talking about, millennials are born between 1980 and 2001. They account for roughly 80 million plus adults. The stats for a millennial workforce, again, as I had mentioned in the beginning, 32% of these applicants that we receive at WyckWyre alone are millennial generation applicants. 46% of all U.S. employees will be from the millennial generation by 2020. So you're looking at a massive amount of people in the workforce that will be taking on our jobs, taking on the jobs that we have available. And when you're looking at how the restaurant industry has outpaced U.S. job growth for the past 15 years, above all other industries, the restaurant is the fastest pace for adding jobs. So this is going to be affecting us the most. We're going to be having the most millennials in our workforce. Now, within that generation group, roughly 59% of themselves identify themselves as part of a minority. That is either, a minority group, or that is, identifying themselves as a woman as well, which is considered that. So the general traits of millennials, they are an extremely team-oriented group. They are very, very driven to achieve. There are many case studies that talk about how driven to achieve and driven to success this generation is. They're highly technologically savvy. These are the people that you're seeing constantly networking with each other via social media, or very, very good on computers, very good at picking up the latest trends in technology. And as I had just mentioned, extremely connected through social media. In a second here, we're actually going to talk about how are we going to go ahead and really take advantage of how connected they are as far as recruiting goes, which I think is, it's been a huge trend. It has been a very big trend for us for years now, but it's starting to really heat up. 2014 was a big year. WyckWyre saw a huge jump, referral-based online applications, and we're seeing more and more kind of come through. So we're going to talk about taking advantage of that. So millennials, what they're looking for in a job is, number one, above a paycheck, they are looking for a positive company culture. This, for us as employers, means that we really need to be able to define what our culture is and define who we are before we can, try recruiting for these groups of this generation, of the millennial generation. They want to know that there is opportunity for advancement, and they want to know how to get there. It needs to be a very outlined structure for them. They need to know, to get to point A, I must do, 1, 2, 3. Then to get to point B, I must do 1, 2, 3. So they're very, very responsive to positive coaching. So that's something that we really need to be able to millennial generation. Last but not least, they're looking for a good amount of leadership to grow underneath, and they're looking for structure in the company with all, which is a really great position for the restaurant industry to sit into, because unlike other organizations, we know the exact positions in our restaurant. We know what goes where, when, how, all of that. We are not exactly, an intangible business where there might not be a position tomorrow that there is today, and whatever it may be. you're looking at QSR, there's typically 4 to 5 positions in a restaurant at any given time. They really enjoy seeing a playing field like that. That makes life easier for them. So millennials, just to kind of wrap up what we just went through, they need to see where their career is going, what they need to do to get there, and that's something that we're going to kind of transition into and talk about now. Again, I just want to make it very clear for those who may have signed in a couple minutes later, 32% of WyckWyre's applicants are, at the current time, millennial applicants. And that is accounting for a huge, huge portion. Also, there is a very huge burst in applicants coming in from millennial generation, and by 2020, you're looking at close to 50% of the workforce being millennials. So why do we want to hire millennials? You know, we're talking about what they want, what they need, but we need to talk a little bit about why are we hiring them. So one thing is we are that a majority of our restaurants are obviously getting a huge burst of millennial dollars coming in because people are starting to work, and when millennials work, they no longer see eating out as a luxury. They see it as a necessity. This is a generation that is not cooking at home every single day. This is a generation that is actually, you know, thinking what do I want for dinner? It's more of a brand, and it's less of what am I going to be cooking. So they know exactly what they want. They're able to come into your restaurants and give you a fresh insight and perspective on the customer base. They are a very team-driven generation. They have grown up in teams. They've grown up in the social media era where everyone is extremely connected. And it's somewhat of a competitive space, but also at the same time, it is one where teams and cliques have been created. And it's, you know, a very networked generation. They're extremely goal-oriented if they are given a structured path. So your management has to be able to provide this to millennials to make them want to work for you. Again, that sincere drive to succeed is laced throughout the generation, and that technology and social media connection is great for you because if you find a rock star millennial player on your team, they can easily open up their cell phone at any time and type out a Facebook message or a Twitter message or put up a picture on Instagram saying, hey, we're hiring and I love my job. So if you're looking for work, come work with me. This is a great way to get those young millennials coming in, giving that fresh insight and perspective to your restaurants. It's also a great way to fill vacancies that you have in your restaurants that may be harder to fill by giving the millennials a voice and by encouraging them to do that. Now, I know from, you know, a perspective of recruiting millennials, that's a little terrifying. We're going to talk about social media usage here in a second. So let's just continue on. So when millennials are looking for jobs, one big thing that we noticed is they're not as active on job boards as we thought they were. They are much more active looking for jobs on Facebook, on Twitter, or any like social media platform. That's kind of their first go-to. They want to see where their friends are working. They want to get reviews from their friends as to how the jobs are. So when you're thinking about that, websites like Glassdoor.com, which we feed all of our jobs to, these are great boards for millennials because it's more of a social network. They get the reviews on your company, and they're able to really discuss or at least look at what is another employee saying about this company. What's the review? So employers, you know, we have a brand that we carry. One side of our brand is, you know, what we sell. And our other side of our brand is what potential employees think of us. If you don't have a very strong brand and you're not getting great reviews online, that could be a very big reason as to why you're not getting employees, especially in the millennial generation, If you're having a really tough time, take some time out this afternoon, take some time out tomorrow, Google your company. Google your specific location. Take a look at what's happening on Yelp. See what your reviews are at specific locations. Take a look at what's happening on Glassdoor.com. And Michelle or myself will be sending out a list of places you can check out the reputation for your company. And start, if it's great, that's great. If it's not, start doing some PR work on it. And we'll be sending out future blogs and stuff like that talking about how you can restore your brand reputation if it's not exactly where you want it to be from an employer standpoint. Now, one cool thing about millennials is 45% of WyckWyre millennial applicants apply through a mobile device. Almost half are applying through, smartphones or iPads or Androids or whatever it may be. If you didn't already receive it, I believe that you should have. Check your inbox. We just strengthened our partnership with Indeed Apply. And what this allows us to do is to let the applicants apply for WyckWyre jobs through Indeed. There's no having to go from Indeed to WyckWyre with even, the elimination of one click can mean a lot of things when you're talking about online hiring. So we did eliminate that one click, and it allows you to take a look at the applicant. If you like them, great. Invite them to fill out a full application or give them a call, have them come to the restaurant. If you really like them, they can fill out the full application there. But we're seeing massive, massive increases in applicants. We're seeing, on average, more than 100% increase in some areas, especially those tough to fill. We're seeing a really good amount. And we're going to continue to tweak the application. We obviously just launched it, but we're very excited about the results thus far. And, we're going to continue to find ways to make the application process easy for the applicant, but at the same time that you need. Last but not least, millennials love communication. Again, I can't stress this enough. We're talking about a group that is extremely socially connected. So what we expected back in the day when we applied for a job is to hear, from the employer if we got an interview. Then once the interview was completed, maybe we'd hear back if, we got another interview or if we were hired. Rarely would we, maybe not hear back if we didn't get the job, especially if it's a job that came with tons of applicants. And if we applied for the job and we weren't chosen even for an interview, we would never, there's a good chance we just wouldn't hear. Millennials aren't used to that. And that's kind of a big issue that any online job board is facing. With regular communication during the recruiting process, so if you're a WyckWyre customer, you know how easy it is to actually communicate during that recruiting process. And it's as simple as, clicking the acknowledge button or clicking the interview button or clicking the hire or the reject button. We found that if you click the reject button on applicants that you know are not going to make it to the next round or you're not going to hire, they are about 70% more likely to spend money in your restaurant again than they would if they put in an application and did not hear from you. And they're also about 45% more likely to still have a positive view of you and recommend you to friends who are looking for jobs. So you're looking at 70% of those people that you're rejecting, if you just keep them in the loop, they're 70% more likely to spend money in your restaurant, again, after being rejected, and 45% more likely to recommend, hey, I know you're looking for a job. You think about maybe applying at that Chili's down the street. You think about applying at that Wendy's down the street, whatever it may be, because they want communication. Even if it's not totally favorable, they still want that. They want to be kept in the loop. And us as employers have to be respectful of that, and that's something that WyckWyre is very big on. And could be a great, easy way for you in just 2 clicks to kind of stay in the favorable view of your potential employees or those who have applied for you. Because at the end of the day, everyone that applies for you has probably at one point been a customer or is going to be a customer. So we need to treat them that way. So now that we have millennials in our restaurants, we've hired them, we need to talk a little bit about how do we get more. from the momentum that we have. We have a little bit of momentum now. How do we continue to keep it going? And what we want to do is we want to let millennials talk. We have been, some companies are very big on allowing for social media usage, not necessarily in the restaurant. I'm not saying revoke your policy and allow everyone to whip out their phones on the dining room floor. That's not it. What I am saying is you need to allow millennials or encourage millennials that you know are doing a good job, that you know are satisfied with their job, to talk about it. If you have a position that needs to be filled, why not go to your rock star employee and say, hey, you know, I have this position. I really think that it could be great if you could just tell your friends about it. Maybe if you could put it on Facebook or if you could put it on Twitter that we're hiring, I'd be really appreciative of that. Millennials are always looking to solve problems, and they want to be a part of the solution. And when you offer them problems like that, you know, you need help fixing, and the more kind of eyes on the problem, the better. The more you get the word out, the better. That's great. Plus, another thing when you think about it is when you're telling a millennial, hey, I want you to tell your friends about this job, and this person that you're saying this to is a very responsible employee. One, birds of a feather usually flock together. Number two, this millennial thinks that or is getting the sense that you trust them and that you want them to be engaged. And you're creating a lot of loyalty there when you ask for help and when you actually take a suggestion. So there's a few ways to kind of incentivize this. You can have them, you know, talk about maybe a day in the life of what they're doing. Maybe you could have, you know, friends or family days where you invite their friends in, let them see whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you're doing enough for the millennial that there's positive praise there. It can't just be, oh, we have, you know, you have a job. Now that you have a job and I'm giving you a paycheck, then what I need from you is for you to do this. So you got to make sure, again, as we had mentioned in the beginning, that positive culture is there. Also, just to be very clear, I always feel the need to say this, make sure that when you're kind of targeting who you want to get the word out, that it's people that you would want more like people of. You don't want to go after your lower employees that, you know, are always late to work or are always calling out and asking them to get the word out. So now that we have millennials in our restaurants, giving you quick tips. Number one tip would be to allow them to use social media. It would also be to, you know, be very, very, very clear about their path, their role, even in the interview process. Say that they're coming in for an entry-level crew member job, talking to them right there and saying, you know, I know that you're applying for this entry-level job. Are you interested in industry in general? And if you're interested in it, let me tell you a few stories. You know, John Smith over here is an assistant manager, but he sat in the same chair that you sat in 2 years ago or 3 years ago and has worked his way up. We as an industry are not great at letting our newcomers know what a land of opportunity that we really are and how quickly you can get promoted if you do a super great job and how we really do reward our top performers. We need to be better at getting the word out, and that happens person by person. It's not a campaign where you send out an email. It's not something where you get everyone in a room at the same time and you talk about success stories in your restaurant. It's having those individual conversations together, and this is huge for millennials. So you need to train your general managers in having these conversations during the interview process, because as much as you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you too. So once we get those engaged millennials in, there's a lot of different ways that we can keep them excited. Work-friendly contests, things as small as like bingo for casual dining. Put the top, you know, specials that you have, and whoever gets bingo first for selling it. And the prize could be anything from, you know, being able to choose your shifts next week or being first or last cut or whatever it may be. For quick service, it could be anything from choosing your shifts next week to maybe, you know, being able to switch out a shift last minute or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to necessarily be a monetized prize. They want a diverse team to work with, so work on building those diverse teams around them. They're looking for diverse work tasks. So as I mentioned before, they want to be part of the solutions for different problems. Our general managers and even assistant managers often take a lot and have a lot on their plate at all times. What can they have, your entry-level millennials help out with more that's beyond their job description? Because millennials want to get their hands dirty. They want to be engaged. And the more engaged you have them beyond just the typical, shift routine, the longer you're going to have them stay at your restaurant because they are excited about it. They want those documented career paths, as I mentioned before, and we were just talking about it with regular coaching. So I mentioned that during the interview, that's a big thing for them to want to hear about the success stories, to want to know how to get from A to B or B to C or C to D. But it also needs to come with regular coaching after they've been hired. It can't be just one conversation that you have in the beginning. It has to be again in 2 or 3 months. Or, there has to be a lot of just examples set forward about that. So it's almost, a training shift in your restaurants. What are we doing to make sure that general managers are really putting it out there as to what could be happening to, Sarah Sue if she works really hard and improves herself in the next 6 months? What could potentially happen? Or in the next year, what could happen? They're also looking for just interactive daily feedback. Is it something that you want them to do a better job on? Is there something they did something really great on? I think oftentimes in a restaurant we're so busy that even just saying, hey, you did a great job today at the end of someone's shift can go unnoticed, because maybe when someone clocks out, that general manager is running around with their hair on fire doing a million other things. But kind of embedding that into the culture would be a very helpful thing, and it does keep millennials engaged because they feel validated. They feel like they have been respected and valued. Again, that opportunity to solve those challenges is big, and ongoing training is huge too. Once they go through a training program, oftentimes, that's it. They have the training, they're good to go, unless they, switch a different position or they move up in the chain. But if there's ever any time to do ongoing training with them, or if you're offered, platforms to do ongoing training in, they're really worth taking a look. We see a huge decrease in turnover when restaurants have ongoing training programs. And I really believe that it's because they're feeling valued. They're learning while they go. They can see the building blocks faster when they're doing this ongoing training, and it definitely helps them out. And it makes them feel like there is a concrete path, which again, as I've mentioned, like a broken record, is huge for millennials. So that is what I have for you when it comes to attracting and engaging millennials. Again, as I mentioned before, we won't be doing a question and answer during this just due to time constraints today. But what I would love to do is if you have any questions, any concerns, any feedback on this or anything else that you may have on your mind after today's webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is listed on the screen here. It is just simply lisa@wickwire.com. And my phone number here is 607-20, I'll give you my cell phone too, 607-206-1296. That's my cell phone. And my office is 607-251-7698. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you again for taking some time out of your busy schedules. I know that some of you are located up in the Northeast. I wish you the best with that terrible storm that you guys have coming through. It means everything to us that you guys took a few minutes out to spend with us today. We know how busy you all are in general. And I look forward to any comments or any further discussion that you'd love to have with me. I love talking about this stuff, so please note, I'm just looking forward to your emails and your phone calls. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon and a productive week.